submission is David Gibbons. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. My original submission was in support of the special heritage rate for the Arts Centre. I received an email to request my support for that, and because of my desire to see both heritage and amenity assets restored sort of in the city, I offered my support. What I subsequently did is actually looked at other similar type initiatives and projects that are also being proposed to be funded within the LTP. And what's interesting when you download the CSV file that you have on your website is there are a significant number of heritage, community assets, including the Performing Arts Precinct, the Provincial Chambers, the Municipal Chambers, the Robert McDougall Gallery, that are receiving long-term capital funding in respect of that. And I suppose my question is, why has the Arts Centre been singled out for a special heritage rate when there's other properties haven't been, and what is the process to determine how you allocate that capital to those projects which in my view are critical to bringing vibrancy and restoring our artistic heritage back in the community?
I think the answer to that question, and gosh, I wish that I'd known that it hadn't been explained well enough, but essentially all of the other projects are on our budget, but they're within the rates. And the question is should we pull them out of rates funding and put them into a targeted rate so people can see that they're contributing to these heritage buildings, and that there is a way to bring things onto the budget that wouldn't otherwise be. The Arts Centre is one of those. So there is no liability or responsibility with the City Council to fund the Arts Centre because it's an independent trust. Right. And what we're asking the people of Christchurch is, would they consider contributing to it? And we thought the most transparent way was to include it in a targeted rate because it will be time specific. Yeah.
And I suppose the question is whether it's known that the Arts Centre is independently owned by a trust, from the council, whereas those other assets, are actually vested sort of in council. I think would be, uncertain to the majority of the ratepayers in the city. I don't think they would distinguish at all between the ownership of those assets. Yeah. They would look at those facilities and they would decide, or not, the value that they had to the community and citizens of Christchurch.
I suspect that you're right, that a lot of people would assume that the council owned the Arts Centre. Yeah. That would be the assumption, I think.
Are there any other assets that historical assets that might sort of fall into a similar category? I'm assuming that the cathedral sort of obviously falls within that.
The cathedral is not owned by the council. The museum is owned under legislation by a trust, but the four councils contribute to it. So Christchurch City contributes the most to its operational expenditure. Waimakariri, Selwyn and Huranui.
So the question therefore is, can council probably more clearly explain to ratepayers about the ownerships in respect of that, and those that sit outside of council's control, the ability to fund that by way of a special rate, of which I'm very supportive. I would say that potentially casting the net wider beyond the Arts Centre is something that should be investigated as well.
Yeah, well, what's gone out for consultation does cast the net wider. It does pick up those other buildings that you suggest and puts it into a targeted rate. The reason for specifically spelling out both the Arts Centre and the base isolation of Robert McDougall was that they were not currently provided for in our LTP.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, and thank you for your submission. Next is